Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how I put to use some things that most carpenters tend to discard on a daily basis, and probably anyone else who does any kind of DIY or in the construction industry. So the items that I'm talking about are these. We've got old hand saws and old worn out multi-tool blades. Now, as everybody knows, I tend to stick to the Fein blades because I think they're very good quality. I do use the odd, when I get caught short, I'll buy the odd sort of generic aftermarket cheap ones. That's my personal preference. I do find that the Fein ones give better life and are slightly superior. But as everybody knows, you know, these aren't cheap. They're quite expensive. You're looking at sort of between £4 and £5 each, and you know, they don't last fantastically long, and it's always a bit of a bane of everybody that they have to keep replacing them. And obviously, you know, good old carpentry staple is the humble handsaw. Now, both these two have, as far as I'm concerned, have reached their usable life for me. This saw, the teeth are okay on it, but as a carpenter, they're a little bit too dull for me. And we'd normally hand that to the bricklayers for them to, you know, to finish off. But what I'm going to show you, what I'm going to do today, is basically how I reuse, recycle, I suppose, these two saws and all these blades. So I'm going to get on with it now. So to explain, the crux of what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to remove this part of this multi-tool blade, this part here, which has got some tiny sort of, I don't know whether they're like electro spot welds on it. So I'm going to remove this part, and then what I'm going to do is cut sections of this saw, and I'm going to basically weld them onto here, so that we use this part of the blade to replace this part of the blade. So before I start cutting up the saw blade, the first thing I need to do is measure the length that I want the blades to be. In this case, it's going to be 50 millimeters. So what I've done with this saw blade is I put some masking tape on it so that I can see easier, because I'm just going to mark with pencil. So we'll mark 50 mil there, and then we'll mark 50 mil there, and then we'll just put a straight edge through there, the back of this other saw. Join those two marks up. We have the length of our blades now. And the next thing I'm going to do is mark the width of them. So I'll just literally place them on there till it's about the full length. Just put a mark there, and a mark there, and then square that across. So there we go. So I've allowed a little bit extra for the width of the disc cutter, so I'm just going to mark those all the way down, and I can cut them all at once then. There, right, let's get some cutting. Right, so I'm ready to cut. I've got a thin slitting blade in my disc cutter. I've clamped the blade down to this work surface just for safety. So the next job I'll do with these is just take them to the bench grinder and just take off the sharp edges. So I've got all my blanks there, they're all done. The next job is to take off this worn out blade from the carrier. I found the best way to do that is I'm going to put this in the vise. I snap this bit off with the adjustable spanner. Wear eye protection if you do that, because just in case any of this springs out. And then what I've got to get the rest off is an old, well, it's not an old, it's a chisel that I use. It's like a wrecking chisel, it's not my best chisel, and I just chisel those welds out with that. So spanner on the blade and just bend it off. Obviously you've got to mind your eyes here. That's that bit off, and then all that's left is to remove this little bit here, which I'll do with my chisel. And that's off. Now probably just tie those up with the grinder. So these the remnants of these welds here, I'll just tidy them up on the bench grinder. So that's my carrier bit part all cleaned up and ready to go. My blanks all cut and ready to go. So the next job is to weld the two together. I've just got to clean this surface off where the weld's going to be, because I think there's some sort of lacquer on there. This one's fairly clean anyway, so I'll do that and then we'll get the welder out. Okay, I've just clamped the carrier part and the blade part into these mole grips, vice grips, and put those in the vise, because that is the best way of holding those two together while I tack it up. Just a quick word about my welder, and this is an inverter welder I bought 3 years ago. It's a gas MIG welder. It's a fantastic bit of kit. When I'm welding these up, I have the voltage set very low and the wire speed set very low. As I said I think in another video, I don't confess to be a welder by any way, shape or form, but I get by, and that does weld those blades together nicely. So this is the final job now, which is just to get my a grinder and just tidy the bottom side and maybe the top side up of these, tidy these welds up a bit. Right, so now for the moment of truth. Let's strap one onto the big boy and cut some wood with it. go all the way through that, you can see it follows the line. It doesn't wander in the line. It follows the line really nicely. I'm not having to push it to cut it. So, you know, it's quite a good cut that I'm getting. Bearing in mind that that saw that I used, the old saw that I used, it was no longer any good or satisfactory for me to use as a hand saw. So, you know, it really has been given a new lease of life in that, welded onto that Fein blade carrier. So I'll just cut this right the way through. Yeah, that gives a really nice cut. I'll try the one with the bigger teeth. So this is the one that's got the much more aggressive tooth pattern on it. Let's have a go with that. Yeah, much more aggressive cut, but still perfectly acceptable if you're roughing out something or you just want to get access to something. So there you have it. I've basically made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 blades that are perfectly usable now, and as usable as when they were originally new. If I wasn't filming this, the whole thing possibly would have took me about half an hour. So I just must say that this is something that I've been doing for a long time. I've never had any problems with it, but you know, if anyone chooses to do this themselves, they do so at their own risk. So there you go. Just a video. It may be of use or interest to somebody, but it just goes to show how I take basically what is scrap, unwanted items, and turn them into something which is very, very useful. And it obviously saves a considerable amount of money. I wouldn't say these would take the place of brand new purpose blades. There's always going to be the need to buy those, you know, if we're doing really fine work. But these are certainly good for any kind of, you know, if you just want to Bosch a hole in something or cut a skirting out the way while you're doing some, you're knocking through work or cutting a hole in some plasterboard. You know, these are really good, and they're hardened. They are hardened teeth on the saw, so they should last as good as the other ones. But I hope someone finds this of interest. Cheers.